Drew Thomas Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. On this show, I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry. Today's episode, sponsored by Barrels Ahead. At Barrels Ahead, we help the wine and craft industry connect with their customers through authentic content. We've got a very special guest on the show today, Mary Pellettieri, co-founder and creator of Note Tonic. So Mary's career evolution, she's moved from a basement brewer to honing her skills at the Siebel Institute to becoming one of the first female brewers on the floor of Goose Island. And then finally, she's launched her own craft tonic and soda company from her kitchen, which is booming right now. Excited to learn more about this story. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Drew. So we started out as a tonic company and as a syrup company, I should say. The craft beer business was really where I got my start in beverage. I was getting a degree at the University of Illinois in Chicago and decided to as a public health major, and I decided to look at the food and beverage industry as a way to focus on new growth for myself. The environmental side of my interests were still there, so I think I always was very interested in how people were using the food chain, how we use food for energy, for plant, for botany, for enjoyment, but also for nutrition. So the food industry was interesting to me, and I started homebrewing with my then boyfriend, who became my partner in this venture. But we were homebrewing together, and we both enjoyed that. I think I got more techie geeky about it, and I started working at the Siebel Institute during that time that I was actually in grad school.
So, Mary, so after the Siebel Institute,
Siebel Institute was where I got my start, but I was also going to graduate school. Siebel actually closed. They merged operations with La Lamande, and I was already kind of on my way and decided after a few years of working another job to get a job at Goose Island. And that's where I got my kind of connected all the Siebel Institute things with all the things I learned after I left Siebel to kind of a quality manager role at Goose Island. So I was more of a technical specialist there, not only helping with all of the laboratory testing and sampling, et cetera. I helped design new products for them. I led teams to do that. So we did a lot at Siebel. I was kind of there, Goose, when I was there for more of their formative years when they were doing Bourbon County style for the first time in a large facility. We were doing 312 was designed when I was there. It's a fun story with that. That beer, started out as a small little kind of unique wheat beer that they didn't want to brand totally at Goose Island and as Goose Island beer. And we made it for several months before we entered the Great American Beer Fest. And one of the brewers accidentally hopped it incorrectly right before the GABF. And it was the batch we were supposed to, bottle for that competition. And I had judged that category a few years in advance. So I was kind of familiar with what the judges were looking for. And I wasn't going to judge it that year, obviously. But as they were going ready to bottle, they're like, we kind of screwed up the hopping. Can you taste this and make sure it's okay? Because I was the quality manager. And I said, yeah, of course. And I tasted it and I said, actually, it's better for the category to maybe better for the beer. So just leave it. Don't do anything to it. Don't blend it. It's fine. And we bottled it and it golded. And it ended up golding 3 years in a row in that category, which was kind of a fun story and a good start for that beer because, winning a gold medal in that competition was a big deal.
The fact that he remembered, like, it wasn't like he threw in some random hops that he didn't even know what he did. And then he spent another 6 months trying to recreate it.
No, they knew exactly what they did. It was just the next batch hops were ready to go, and that's what he took.
That's good.
Yeah. So we were able to replicate that award-winning recipe from then on out.
What a great story.
It's a fun story of how these things start. Yeah, but I was there for that. Matilda, 312 Bourbon County Stout, kind of all of what makes Goose Island today, now owned by a very large brewery, obviously,
Mhm.
um, became known, and it's fun to be at the start of that entrepreneurial journey with other folks. When I left Goose, I went to Miller Coors, spent about 5 years in their quality as well as kind of a business operations role, commercializing products out of the marketing team's thoughts. And to me, that was um, interesting. Worked with big brewers, large breweries. We had a lot of the same challenges the small brewery did, which was always fun.
Mhm.
But I didn't like how much administrative work that was required for the job, and I
Mhm.
thought I really want to get back to that true entrepreneurial, work that I used to do. So I left Miller Coors and started making these tonic syrups in my kitchen.
That's great.
And I think I was on the path of trying to become a maybe a different type of brewer. I was looking at making herbal beers and or making tinctures for beer.
Mhm.
And I
What a tincture for beer, so that would,
like,
like
an
like
overad.
gas it
So
up?
you hear a Berliner Weiss, a traditional style that used to have raspberry and woodruff syrups, and I was very intrigued by this idea of having a syrup that goes into a beer. And of course, Radler and Shandy. These are
Mhm.
basically beers mixed with soft drinks. So there's a lot of interesting, traditional things that has happened with beer that I thought, well, maybe there's a category there. But I also at that time saw tonic syrups being made at bars, and bartenders were making their own tonic water out of basically crafting an herbal tincture with some simple syrup.
Mhm.
And that interested me as well. When I was a brewer at Goose Island, I couldn't drink and I got pregnant a couple times. So that I remembered, the first time trying to like figure out what do I drink now that I know I'm pregnant,
Yeah.
it's and you can't tell anyone.
Uh-huh.
So you have to kind of keep it a secret. I used to drink tonic water
Mhm.
with a splash of orange juice. It was awful. So that was that thought was still in my head that
Mhm.
someone needs to fix tonic water, someone needs to fix, what's available when people don't want to drink at bars.
Yeah.
And I didn't see really any solutions coming around at that time. That was over a decade ago. So um, you know, just played around, started making some bitter syrups, I would
Mhm.
say, kind of bitter soft drink syrups based on vermouth and, other traditional herbal recipes that I found in literature.
Mhm.
And eventually, enough customers at farm markets, etc., and our investors said, "Hey, you need to back this, and let's get you doing this, in a ready to serve bottled format." So we raised some money and started bottling, and it's just been a truly a roller coaster since.
Yeah. I mean, that entrepreneurial spirit, especially, like, figuring out, I need to drink something complex. When you were in college back in botany, were you doing any experiments back then, or
Really, I mean, I was more reading and into herbology and just reading about how herbs were always used. I think I've always liked that connection
Mhm.
to the plant world with
Mhm.
what we eat and drink. So
Yeah.
I was a big Michael Pollan fan.
Uh,
There's probably a lot of them out there now, but I was an early one.
mhm.
With some of his original work. And I think there's always been a real interest of mine there. And I just took that interest instead of blogging or writing about it. I went into just crafting.
Going out entrepreneurial. So talk to me about those, like, the early days when you're investigating these syrups. How did you walk the viewer through this who may not be, like, from the kitchen? Like, where did you
Yeah.
start?
Well, I had obviously some beer experience. I actually
Mhm.
was literally making beer again in my kitchen, so that was kind of fun. But as I just started steeping different dried herbs
Mhm.
in water,
Mhm.
making different levels of simple syrup with different types of sugars. realized there's a lot of sugars, there's a lot of different acids, there's juices, there's herbs, there's all these things to choose from. And of course, if you read, the story of Coca-Cola, which, um, it's a very successful brand, obviously, it was kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
He kind of just started with herbal tinctures and some syrups, and made a very
And
successful,
some other good stuff that people.
yeah, some other good stuff. Um, but he was successful at doing kind of very
Mhm.
similar thing. And I think a true soft drink is really that. It's a combination of what tastes good, maybe what might be good for you,
Mhm.
um, in a format that you want to drink.
Yeah.
There's a lot of soft drinks in the market now that I think are um, maybe not so tasty. They might be good for you, but they're not necessarily tasty, and
Uh-huh.
that goes against kind of obviously a key value of mine
Mhm.
because I grew up effectively making things taste better. That was a real, not only business need, but it was something that I really enjoyed, and
Yeah.
I like tasting things. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Talking about not so tasty, because that kind of resonated with me. Like a lot of these artisanal soft drinks, sh- to me, they don't resonate with me. They're not that tasty. And that may be more of a European taste versus an American taste or a US taste that's used to very like sweet Coca-Cola,
sure.
Sprite, whatever. As you were creating these tinctures, were you taking the US palate into factor or just creating something that was good that the US palate would kind of come to appreciate over the
Yeah,
next 10 years?
I guess a broader question would be, um, if all craft artisanal beverage makers did that, we probably would not be happy with the variety we would have. So,
Uh-huh.
yes and no. I live in a very, middle of the country city, Milwaukee,
Mm,
and it's a bit of a sister city to Chicago. Chicago obviously has a broader international community, a broader community that travels internationally. Um, that isn't to say Milwaukee isn't sophisticated. Milwaukee has obviously those folks here too. It's just a smaller group of people.
mhm.
And when we were out the farmer markets, basically selling our then kind of tonic syrups. They were like aperitivo sodas that you'd find in Italy. Some people liked them, some people didn't. Some people loved them. We had a lot of folks that would go through these farmers markets out of state and they just buy all of them up, in
Uh-huh.
multiples. So we saw that there's clearly like there's, rabid fans, and then
Mhm.
there are those that are just like, what is going on? And we didn't want to necessarily disappoint our local community. So
Mhm.
when we went to make our first launch of our products, ginger beer was a very loved product. We took a little modern spin on it. We made it drier. One, we didn't use as much sugar.
Mhm.
We used date sugar, which gave it some roundness, some savoriness, and we also used real ginger oils. And that seemed to hit a mark with not only the folks that were looking for something different, but also the folks that liked maybe that more sweet palate, but didn't necessarily, they knew they were probably drinking too much sugar anyway.
Mhm.
So we took that to the market along with Teutonic waters. And they were the tonics that people really quite like that we made. We made an Indian tonic water and we made a bitter lemon
Mhm.
tonic waters, essentially.
And
Um,
what would be the flavor difference between those 2?
so they're both made in our portfolio. Indian tonic water is simply a slightly different tonic. It's low sugar and it's made with gentian root, which is the root that you find in say Campari and the big kind of the digestivos that are in the market. Um, and then of course quinine. So we have the slightly different mix of bitters in our Indian tonic water, low sugar and a little grapefruit. And then our bitter lemon has juice in it, a little more sugar, and more lemon character. So, but both use that aperitivo soft drink base, which has the 2 types of bitters. Um, and they are great on their own, or they're great, but you have to like a little bit of a bitter profile. And there are
Yeah.
folks that do like that. They're, drink green tea, they drink, espresso, they drink IPAs, and they're very happy to find a soft drink that kind of meets that need. And there are more folks that are drinking, for health and quality, and bitters tend to meet
Yeah.
that digestive need too. So
And I think
wasn't
in
our
the
original
last 10
purpose, but that's
years,
what.
over
Yeah.
the last 10 years, the flavor, like the US, like the consumption patterns have definitely shifted towards that more complex bitter profile.
Yes. Yeah. And if you look at the data since COVID, people are looking for just more flavor in general.
Mhm.
We sent our we made a version of our Indian tonic water with more gentian root during COVID, and went to the New York Times, and we didn't think we'd get a write up, but the wine writer, the New York Times, adored everything we made. And she
Oh,
said it's finally nice to taste something that has real flavor, that has depth and complexity, that isn't just kind of about being something that's, supposed to be healthy for you. Um, and even those qualities might be questionable. I'm spending a lot of money on this stuff. What am I getting for it?
mm,
And I think flavor is always a base. Anyone will tell you it's got to taste good. Consumers are expecting that as a base, and some products are missing that mark for
mhm,
sure.
for sure.
The ones that
I
are
was,
selling well aren't.
yeah, that's the sure sign. Now, when you were starting off in the farmer's market, were you really going towards that non-alcohol, or were you partnering with bars and helping as a mix?
We were mostly focused on giving the bartenders a new tool for mixing, their own, if they can't make their own tonic syrup, something that they can buy.
Mhm.
There's folks still doing that. We got out of that business of doing a tonic water syrup. Funny thing, it's more popular now than ever before, but because of that non-alcoholic serve. But we thought it's simply not. It's a lot of hands-on work, and it wasn't a big enough business. We like the idea of pulling together recipes from the original formulas that we had to a new formula, and we share that with co-packers now, and our co-packers make our products. But
Okay.
we still make the formula, so we still start in the kitchen with herbs and spices and make tinctures and replicate that,
Mhm.
because that's actually the real kind of heart of who we are. We love the fact that we have control of our formulas and what's in them. We know exactly why these things are in them, because we wanted to replicate, these three herbs or whatever. It's sometimes hard to really replicate that herbal note, but we found some really great suppliers on the extract business to help us. So,
Oh, that's fantastic. Like over the last few years, that this just the word suppliers has there's been a huge supply chain problem in the beverage industry.
oh
Has
yeah,
Top Note had to navigate that with getting ingredients and
oh yeah, yeah. Um, I'm still thinking about your original question about
oh
flavor, and if we make flavors for kind of a broad audience, of course we do. But ginger beer, that being said, sweet is something that is, I think US might have a little bit too much love for.
uh-huh.
If you taste some beverages on the market, as we were talking about, some of those can be um, still too sweet, even though they're using sweeteners. So I think there's a move and a shift away from that. But as you mentioned during COVID, and I read there's more shift towards more flavor.
Uh-huh.
During COVID, we had a challenge with our ginger and getting our ginger supply, and I think that's just because it's an Asia is kind of the source for ginger, and finding that supply took some time, and we ran out of stock a couple times.
Yeah.
That was the real only challenge we had with our kind of herbal extracts. The bottles were also a problem, and still remain to be that, because
Mhm.
they are expensive. Yeah.
That's just all the challenges of navigating the last few years. Look, jumping back to 2017, you founded Top Note, and then right after that, you received that tremendous award from SoFi that really catapulted your brand.
Yeah, the Specialty Food Association, we're a member of, and it was kind of our first, foray into that big, food show kinda world,
Uh-huh.
and we put our name in the hopper and sent our Indian tonic water in. It was 2 weeks old, and we
Uh-huh.
eventually essentially came home with an Oscar,
That's
it was
amazing.
a pretty amazing, change of events for us. We had no idea our product would resonate that strongly with, really big critics. These were obviously bartenders, chefs, and professionals in New York that rank that. So our Indian tonic water, I think, was just recognized because it was unique, was lower in sugar. If anyone would drink it today, it certainly drinks like a tonic water. You can mix it with gin, vodka, or whatever, but if you want to drink it on its own, it drinks like a bitters and soda, but a true bitters and soda, one that has a little more bitterness.
Uh-huh.
So, if your fans are out there thinking, "What does this taste like?" That's what I would qualify it as, kind of a light sugared bitters and soda, very refreshing, and some people just love it. I mean, there's fans out there that just love that tonic. We grew our name on that tonic. We still sell that, and this is a very challenging market, say to kind of crack with something different tasting. Our Indian tonic water is still our best seller here in Wisconsin, and it tastes nothing like any other tonic water on the market.
Yeah, people are like, "This is not tonic."
Well, some people, found it and loved it, and
Uh-huh.
so that kind of goes against the grain a bit. Of
Mhm.
should you make your stuff taste like everyone else's? Not necessarily. Make your stuff taste like you want it.
Mhm. I
And
think that's an important part. Do
I
make
think it is. I mean, clearly you can't be innovating so far that people don't know what the heck you're doing, but
uh,
we always set a modern spin on what is known as kind of traditional mixers.
mhm.
We launched our classic tonic water, which is our third in the group. I think it was in 2019. That one just recently double golded at the San Francisco Spirits Award.
Oh, wow.
And that's a big, big honor. I think, you know, many brands have just simply made their brand off that one award. We were shocked, again, because every single judge must gold the product for it to double gold.
Oh,
And if you know anything about that award, it's all the best somms in the country, all the top bartenders that you see kind of get all the media that go
mhm.
there. So it's the critics of the critics. I mean, it's really
Oh,
a
wow.
critical panel. They all golded our tonic water. It was the second double gold we received in like 3 months because we also won one at the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers Award. So that tonic's hitting the mark right now with customers on what should be the standard. And that would say if anyone wants to try our tonic water as true kind of gin and tonic mixer,
Uh-huh.
pick up that one.
That's gonna be their gateway into the
The
other
classic
more
tonic,
exotics.
it's so good. It is highly flavorful. So compared to say the other premium tonics on the market, you're going to find that you have a lot more aroma, a lot more character, and the gin will still come through, which is really the exciting part about mixers. Mixers are a very challenging soft drink category to
Yeah.
make because you're not necessarily making just a soft drink that people drink on their own. You're
Mhm.
making something that is intended to be diluted with some spirit, probably some ice.
Mhm.
That alone, it requires, a
Yeah.
kind of a balance of flavor. And then, that spirit can hide or mask or overwhelm. And you don't want the mixer to hide, mask, or overwhelm the spirit. So it has to
Uh-huh.
be this beautiful synergy. And it's hard to do both, right? You make something quite tasty on its own, and you make something that's mixable. We like to think that we're up for that challenge.
Uh-huh.
And that's what we set out to do. It
And
isn't to say,
in your opinion, like, with gin, like, the flavor profile of gins is all across the board. What
"Oh, yes,
what 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 style of gin would you recommend your tonic meshing best with?
yeah, that's a broad question." But I was gonna say it doesn't work with everything. So,
It's
the Indian tonic water, for example, that bitters and soda one works lovely with a lot of the botanical gins out there, the ones that might be more citrus forward, as same thing with our bitter lemon. But there's some craft spirits out there, the smaller distillers. They may have more different types of carbohydrates, say, in their finished
Mhm.
product, and it comes off as almost sweet, and you lose some of the character. So, I would say a clean botanical gin from Spain, Italy, those are great, or one from the U.S. And then there's our classic tonic. I would say goes with your classic juniper or Spanish style gin.
Okay.
So your English and Spanish. There's so many though, and they really are like
Oh,
because there's so many, you really can't just have one tonic water.
uh-huh. Yeah, I've been amazed at the gins over the last few years. We had Bar Hill on the show a few months ago, and they've got a gin from honey.
Oh
So it's
yeah.
got a real complex taste, and yeah, you got to kind of know which tonic you're putting in your gin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
before.
get back to innovating with tonics again soon. We put a pause to some of that because of the pandemic, and we want to get our cost structure in order before we start line extending again in the mixers. So
Yeah, let's talk about that because in 2017 you started, and then
Mhm.
quickly had to ramp up. How what were the challenges of scaling from like hitting that Oscar-winning SoFi award to being able to actually fulfill all the demand?
Well, it just required cash, because you have to build the inventory, and that's still our biggest barrier to growth, is access to some capital,
Hmm.
which we're working to change. But we always have to build inventory for, the next 3 months, and if that includes a large restaurant group, or if that starts to include, a big grocery store, we've got to be ready for that.
Hmm.
So it's usually just kind of finding the cash. We've been lucky in the sense that we have investors. We've have investors re-up. We've had SBA loans. We've gotten grants. So we've somewhat bootstrapped this.
Hmm.
But that's really the biggest hurdle to a lot of these. You have to be ready with your capital, and your suppliers need to be ready as well. We work with large enough suppliers that it's not a problem in that regard.
Okay, well that's
Yeah.
good. No, but
Yeah.
going into ramping up and you're going full steam ahead like so many businesses were going into the pandemic. How did you guys react and then come out of it?
So we, unlike say the spirits world, which we saw a lot of our craft spirit partners decide to start making, something completely different and hand sanitizer. We didn't have to do anything like that. We just had to keep stock on the floor. And that became the challenge because um, everything became longer and longer lead times. So our six packs went from 4 weeks lead time to 12 weeks lead time, and we
Mm,
don't know how much you need. You got to buy a bunch, and that's 3 months above where you're supposed to be with your bottles. It's just it never seemed to quite match. So we were always kind of chasing our tail in materials, just to make sure we had enough materials for the next run. And we ran fairly lean. We kept our some products ran, I would say, heavy through the pandemic, but some products we continuously ran out of, and that's the challenge of being a small business. I think most customers and our distributors and our retailers were all very accommodating and
mhm.
understanding. So just keeping product on the shelf was the goal.
Were you
We
doing
did.
direct to consumer sales at the time?
Yeah,
Or
we did. We had a can run of tonic water, a classic tonic, that
uh-huh.
double gold one,
Mhm.
that we had extras from something we did for Costco. And we were like, well, we've got extras. Let's put this on Amazon. And we threw it on Amazon, and it sat there for a while. And then I don't remember what date, but it was about a month into the pandemic. Someone put it out there on Facebook that tonic water and zinc, prevent COVID.
Oh, geez. Well, that's
And I was like, "Oh, no." And then suddenly we started seeing these orders come through on Amazon. I was like, "What's going on?" And then it was just
on
like literally boom, 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 boom. We spent 2 weeks getting out of that. It when we ran out of stock. I think it could have kept going for months on end, but we ran out of stock, which was unfortunate. We couldn't turn those folks to our bottles. The cans were value packed essentially.
Oh, I see.
Um, yeah. So it, those weren't necessarily the customers that we needed for long-term growth anyway, but it
Yeah.
did certainly help push that product into the market and help keep, cash coming in for us. So it's nice.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you've got your store now, and you've got a subscription-based service.
We do.
What percentage of your sales are directly through that store to consumers?
Not a lot. We don't do a ton of work on it. We don't advertise on
Mm,
Facebook and Instagram, which is usually how you get a lot of that going. And that
mm,
requires quite an investment. It's just something we don't have, I would say, the bandwidth to really staff. So
mhm,
we've left that to let it grow on its own. I still send emails out to our kind of VIP list.
uh-huh,
And when there's a sale, or like for the holidays, I'm going to push out, special sales for the subscribers and that sort of thing. So we do kind of the minimum for that, but we did a lot of work to make that work through the COVID. We made sure that we had basically a shipper that required, no extra plastic and that sort of thing. So everything we send out is 100% recyclable. That's something that drove me nuts when I would order stuff on,
mhm.
online. We have all this plastic.
Oh, yeah.
So I made sure our customers didn't have to deal with, plastic peanuts and plastics and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. So we made sure our shippers are very sustainable, and they're made for e-commerce. So it keeps it simple to open and get your stuff out and just break it down and have nice tonics in your pantry for your party.
No, that's good. I mean, it's a good channel to keep open, whether or not you're focusing your efforts on it.
Yeah.
Keeping it kinda primed and ready to go is because you never know
Yeah.
how the economy is gonna shift again.
You don't, and it's nice to have kind of problem solved. Bottles are still very expensive to ship.
Mhm,
It became more expensive kind of post-COVID to watch those shipping rates go up.
mhm.
So that's kind of also stalled us a bit. We'll go back to cans at some point, but right now and we do have some flavors in cans, our new soft drink line, but we're not, like, again, we're not focused on an e-commerce, way of solving. Although a lot of folks that hear these sorts of podcasts and hear about us have to
Mhm.
buy. That's how they have to buy because we're
Yeah.
mostly Midwest based.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, it's I mean, you don't a lot of it since it's not alcohol, you can kinda
We could
ship
ship
through the
anywhere.
state lines a lot easier.
Yeah,
A
we've
lot
shipped
easier.
overseas. We have shipped, we're on a platform that sells direct to stores, so a little B2B market, and we've shipped to England, to Italy, to France. Kind of fun.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's amazing. As we're kinda wrapping down, there's a 2 questions I wanna ask, though. As you've grown in this trajectory, is there anything you would have done differently?
I think if I would do it again, I would go back to the drawing board and be sure our brand story was very clear from the get-go.
Mhm,
That's always a challenge to get out there and make sure that we had enough money in our budget for continual marketing. That it's just something that we've had to pulse in and out,
mhm,
and that's really not a way to continuously grow. We now have budgetary, we've budgeted out marketing through for now on because we just
mhm,
know we're never going to grow if we're not marketing.
mhm.
But during COVID, we had to turn things off, and that was one of the things that we had to turn off. But to start, I think if we set ourselves, a nice pool of money to keep marketing with, we might have been better off at this point. It's challenging. Small brands have only so much money, and so
Uh-huh.
much of it has to go to making the product.
Mhm,
Um, and then you've got to figure out how you're going to pay people to sell it, and how you're
mhm.
going to pay people to market it, and how you're
Yeah.
going to keep your books up, and all that fun stuff. So it's never like, you know, it's never an easy thing, but I think I probably would have shifted more money to marketing and a little less in sales, just so what was on the shelf, was more easily pulled,
Sure.
because you want to go deep before you go wide.
Another thing, like just keeping the engine kind of running and primed. It's harder to start it back up again than it once it's off.
That's true.
And
Yeah.
that's something we encounter all the time in the industry.
Yeah.
The second question is, what advice would you offer someone trying to launch a brand in this category?
Well, beverage is, beverage companies need a lot of capital. As I mentioned, they need a lot of capital to make the product, and they need a lot of capital to market it.
Mhm.
There is a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of chatter. Keeping your brand story as clean as possible and as consistent as possible is important. So I would say just be ready. We raised less than $1 million. I think we needed to raise probably 3 million
Mm.
just to get going.
Wow.
And that's on an idea, which is very hard to do. The investors won't necessarily give you money on an idea.
Sure.
So it's kind of like, how do you make it happen? You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you get going and there's not enough traction, they'll say, we're not investing, but they're not going to invest in you with that, so how do you do it?
Mhm.
It just takes a lot of energy, excitement, and true belief in what you're doing all the time. So you don't start without the money and don't start without true belief. You
That's
won't last.
2 very good points, and I think also the other thing I heard from what you said is have a clear m m d idea of what you want the thing to taste like. Don't make it
Mhm.
taste like everyone else's. You
Yeah,
have to have a passion for that flavor.
I think you have to have a set of values that you're working around. There's a lot of folks that get into beverages that aren't necessarily like you know, food chemists or beverage creators from the start. They didn't
Mhm.
grow up in a brewing lab like I did. They are they farm it out, so to
Mhm.
speak. There's brands owned by much bigger personalities than me, and those aren't necessarily things that they made. They let someone else do that, and sometimes you can tell. You can
Mhm.
tell, and they might not have a true point of view on flavor.
Mhm.
um, you don't see that, say, in the wine world. You don't see that in the craft spirits world.
Mhm.
These are products, and certainly even in the big wine and spirits world, at some point, someone had a real point of view on what it should taste like, and
Mhm.
they went out to do that. So, yeah, I think the true artisanal craft beverage makers, um, they may not always get all the PR, they may not always get all the
Uh-huh.
money, but they're the true ones out there. So support them.
You will. So, Mary, where can people find out more about you and Top Note
So
Tonic?
topnotonic.com, we have a storefront there. We routinely blog. We have recipes that we push out, and we refresh that information all the time. And if you sign up for our newsletter, we'll be for sure to keep you in touch with things that are happening in our world. So that's kind of how you find us. We are found at the Whole Foods markets in the Midwest and a lot of independent liquor stores. So if you're in the Midwest, Chicagoland, or Milwaukee area, Madison, you should see us on the shelf. So
Perfect.
yeah,
Check it out. Well, Mary, thank you so much for joining us today.
thank you so much, Drew. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Look forward to tasting your tonic.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye bye.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.